And as Greg said, I do teach at American University, and I try to take a little bit of bring my business marketing background as well as the academic background to take a broad picture look at this whole concept of what we're calling coordinated outreach campaigns. See the kinds of things that other people are doing, what is the available research out there. And I think I press, that's my point, right? Just, okay. Essentially looked at what kind of research has been done, whether it's academic research, what kind of overviews have people taken to look at this concept of coordinated outreach campaigns, and I'll give you a definition in a minute. And I also took a look at some of the case histories out there, the case studies, some examples of these kinds of campaigns. A definition of what we mean by coordinated outreach campaigns. And the term coordinated outreach campaigns is not necessarily a term that's really used out there in marketing. It's something that I wanted to come up with a very broad definition to make sure that we encompass any possibility of these kinds of campaigns. So the definition that I came up with is that it's any communication, advocacy, marketing, branding, promotional effort involving more than a single entity working cooperatively and with a unified message to achieve a single goal or to serve a shared interest. And I wanted to talk a little bit about each one of these. I specifically tried to make this as inclusive as possible because people use different terms to apply to these kinds of situations, and each one of these may have a slightly different role. I teach in a school of communication, people who, and that implies in many cases public relations, and public relations people think that marketing is a subset of public relations. Okay. Advocacy, lots of times advocacy tends to refer to dealing with issues or with legislation, regulatory kinds of things. Marketing people, I have an MBA in marketing. Marketing people see all these other things as a subset of marketing. So different perspectives have different ways of looking at things. Branding is a very specific kind of role, or plays a very specific kind of role. It's a type of marketing. It's a way of establishing identity. And then promotional efforts simply to promote something. So I wanted to try to make that very inclusive in terms of the kinds of campaigns that can be included under this concept of coordinated outreach campaigns. The next one is involving more than a single entity. And the number doesn't matter, how many different entities. What seems to be driving the way that these kinds of campaigns work is that there's more than one. Okay? And that means that once you have more than one entity doing something, the dynamics change, the decision-making process changes. So it doesn't matter how many there are, because I think once you make that cross that threshold, that really changes the kind of campaign that it is. And this is really the essence of the definition: working cooperatively and with a unified message to achieve a single goal or to serve a shared interest. There has to be that goal. It has to be unified. It has to have that shared interest. That's an essential part of these kinds of campaigns. I wanted to focus a little bit more on one piece of that, and that's the unified message. I believe that the message is, from everything that I've looked at with these kinds of campaigns, the message is what makes it a campaign. The message is what causes that unification or achievement of that common goal. That's really the most important part. And I think the good news from the standpoint of changing the conversation is that I think we've gotten to that point. We have some ideas as to what the message should be. There's really not that much available research out there on this. There really isn't that much talking about this broader concept of coordinated campaigns. Most of what there is out there has to do with generic product promotion campaigns, and I think that this is what people identify as these kinds of campaigns. We all know got milk, pork, the other white meat, beef, it's not, beef, it's what's for dinner. There's all of these generic product promotion campaigns, and there's a fair amount of research in the marketing community, in the marketing academic community, that deals with these kinds of campaigns. And those kinds of campaigns actually fit in very nicely with the concept of marketing. There's another concept in marketing that just makes a distinction between generic marketing and brand-related marketing. Generic marketing is when you promote the category, milk, and, well, milk's not a good one, orange juice, generic category, and Tropicana is brand marketing. So, and oftentimes you don't even need to have an industry to do generic marketing. When AOL, when America Online first came on board, they did a lot of generic marketing, generic branding. They basically tried to convince everybody that the internet's a great way to communicate with people. The internet's a great way to do shopping, all of these kinds of things. And by the way, go with America Online. Once competitors started coming in there, they had to do more brand marketing. They had to move away from convincing people that that category is a good category, and they had to do brand marketing. So this concept of generic versus brand exists kind of separate from these industry campaigns, but that I think has led a number of people to study that concept and to see how industries have approached this kind of thing. So the emphasis with the research on those kinds of campaigns is not so much the coordinated side of it, but it's more the role of generic marketing. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And I don't mind being interrupted. So if you have questions as I go along, please, let me know. I also wanted to see why people embark in these kinds of campaigns. And there's a number of different reasons. Economic is probably the biggest one. And all of those generic product promotion campaigns fall into that area. The phrase that's used most often with generic product promotion campaigns is to increase the size of the pie, or to raise the water level so that all the boats rise. So you have all this kind of imagery, and essentially it is to get people, it's to increase the demand for a product. So if you increase the demand for the entire category, everybody's slice of that pie gets a little bit bigger. So that's the primary reason for these kinds of campaigns. Another reason is legislative or regulatory. And certainly the reason we have all these associations in the Washington, D.C. area is because they want to have some kind of impact on Capitol Hill. They want to make sure that the voice of the industry is represented. And sometimes there may be campaigns, there may be communication or outreach campaigns that are a part of that. Certainly there is direct lobbying going on, but sometimes the industry may need to actually reach out to the general public or to employees within an industry or to customers of that particular product to serve a certain kind of legislative or regulatory purpose. Workforce or pipeline is another purpose for these kinds of campaigns. Engineering is not the only industry that is facing a shortage. Nurses is a big one, and I have an example of something that's being done with nursing. But there's been others. There's teachers in the past. After 9/11, firefighters and police, the first responders, wanted to improve not improve their image, but they wanted to seize upon the attention that was out there. So there are other industries that look to this kind of coordinated outreach effort. General image building, and some of these, and these are not mutually exclusive. We do, when these kinds of campaigns happen, you have to do a little bit of all of these things to make things happen. So there may be some campaigns that are just, or that are primarily for the purposes of improving the image of that industry. Funeral directors, parking professionals. Sometimes it's just difficult to even engage in any kind of conversation until there's some improvement of the industry. And the image is not just in terms of negative image, but it could be understanding. It could be kind of an education about that particular industry. Industry unification. There may be a need to figure out who is a part of this industry. Let's do some outreach to find out, are there suppliers? Are there other parts of this industry, people that might be influenced? And it's a way of bringing the industry together. Crises. It's a great way to bring everybody together, have a problem. And oftentimes the industries do have some issues that are best dealt with on an industry-wide basis. Public service, another one. And sometimes the public service kind of comes out of either the legislative or the crisis environment. With one of the examples I'm going to show you is the distilled spirits industry and their way of dealing with irresponsible drinking, drinking and driving, binge drinking, those kinds of things. So those are kind of the different purposes. There's another way to kind of look at the way these campaigns play out. And it's the way that they focus, what kind of focus they have. The campaigns, let me put all of these up there, the campaigns can focus on the organizations that are a part of that coordinated effort. And a lot of the industry campaigns are that. Let's focus on the companies or the organizations that are a part of this. You can focus on the products or the output. That's the generic product campaigns, where it's not, it doesn't matter who's playing a part in all of this, but it matters what is it that we produce. And then finally, to focus on the profession or on the discipline, the people within that industry. So it doesn't matter what the companies are. It doesn't matter that we have industry and academic institutions here. It matters that we're talking about engineers. Okay, so there can be a number of different ways to focus these campaigns. And one other way to kind of categorize the types of campaigns that are out there is the levels of involvement or the commitment from the players within the stakeholders, the S word, or the stakeholders within the community or within the industry. And I've come up with 3 levels. One is kind of a short-term commitment. This is something that if there is a crisis, if there is some legislation that needs to be put forward, this is something that people can come together and actually solve that problem, dealing with some kind of an unexpected situation. It isn't a long-term commitment. It isn't a change within the industry or the community in terms of how things operate. Second one is umbrella marketing campaigns, and all those generic product promotion campaigns fall into that. And that is that we choose to focus on that product. We choose to just have an association with other people that are similar to us to be able to further our marketing efforts. And the final one is kind of a little bit deeper. It's a way of really the community or the industry looking at itself to say, is this what I want to be? It's a new identity. It's creating a new identity. And I think that goes a little bit deeper in terms of what that industry or what that community needs to do. It is a longer-term relationship that it needs to foster within the community. Okay, planning the coordinated outreach campaign. I tried to take a look at both planning and implementation, how these kinds of campaigns actually come to pass and what kinds of factors are important in making these things happen. So first decision that needs to be made in the planning process is who's going to be involved. With a lot of the generic product promotion campaigns, the ones that we have the most research on, there's industry organizations that already exist. So that decision is not that tough to make. We know who's going to be involved. It's that industry, that association is the one who takes the leadership role in that involvement. Control is the next decision, and that's kind of related. Whoever's going to be involved, you got to figure out who's going to control things and what kinds of things are they going to control. With any kind of campaign, and especially when you have a term of coordinated in the definition of the campaign, you need to have some level of control. You need to figure out how those kinds of decisions will be made.